Express of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
On the third day of his visit or state visit to the People's Republic of China at the invitation of his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, laid a wreath of flowers in front of the People's Heroes commemorative stone in Beijing. In the burning Middle East file, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh has warned that the Palestinian territories knew a situation of unprecedented complexity at all levels. And Russia has warned Ukraine against a desire to continue grain exports via the Black Sea, underlining that there were no more safety guarantees after the expiry of an agreement that allowed them to be transported despite the war. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First, Muslims around the world are celebrating today the beginning of the first month of the Islamic New Year. Therefore, the first day of Muharram, marking the beginning of the new year for 1445 in the Islamic calendar, started today, Wednesday, throughout the all Arab and Muslim countries. On the third day of his state visit to the People's Republic of China at the invitation of his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, laid a wreath of flowers in front of the People's Heroes commemorative stone in Beijing. Earlier in the day, President Tebboune met the chairman of the Standing Committee of the National Assembly of the People's Republic of China, Zhao Leji, and the Chinese Premier Li Qiang. The details with our colleague Said Bougazi in this report.
The meeting with the chairman of the Standing Committee of the National Assembly of the People's Republic of China, Zhao Leji, took place at the Grand People's Palace in the presence of the large ministerial delegation accompanying President Tebboune and the ambassador of Algeria to Beijing, Hassan Rabhi. President Tebboune expressed at the start of this meeting his pride to meet at the headquarters of the Grand People's Palace, witness of a long march of the Chinese people on the path of development and liberation, reiterating the excellent nature of Algerian-Chinese relations. Recording the cooperation established between the National People's Assembly, APN, and the Chinese National People's Congress, and the existence of a friendship group between the two parliamentary institutions, President Tebboune stressed the importance of further supporting this group. He also stressed the need to intensify coordination and exchange of visits, particularly in the context of the rapprochement between the two countries, calling for the establishment of a consultation body between the elected representatives of the two peoples. Algeria supports China's decisions on the international level, affirmed President Tebboune, hailing at the same time the support brought by China to the decisions of Algeria. I hope to see close coordination between Algeria and China at the level of the UN Security Council, he said. For his part, Zhao Leji hailed the progress made by Algeria in recent years under the direction of the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, affirming China's concern to work with Algeria to further develop their global strategic relationship. The President of the Republic also met today in Beijing with the Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang. The meeting took place at the Grand People's Palace in the presence of the large ministerial delegation accompanying President Tebboune and the ambassador of Algeria to Beijing, Hassan Rabhi. During this meeting, President Tebboune indicated that the Algerian-Chinese relations were excellent and that the two countries help and support each other. China is a friendly country, a country that has become a world power on economic, diplomatic and military plans, he said. President Tebboune affirmed that the projects discussed during his talks with his Chinese counterpart were structuring projects, maintaining that Algeria was moving resolutely towards a new era as a military, economic and diplomatic power in Africa. Algeria needs the Chinese experience, he added, formulating the desire to achieve positive results as soon as possible. President Tebboune reiterated, moreover, Algeria's readiness to cooperate with China in all areas, like the exploitation of mines and the development and construction of factories, welcoming at the same time the achievement by a Chinese partner of an electric car battery factory in Algeria, as well as the electronic industries projects. In turn, the Chinese Prime Minister affirmed that his country was working to make President Tebboun's state visit to China a new start in the relations between Algeria and China in order to achieve the aspirations of both countries.
And the National People's Assembly and the Council of the Nation will close their 2022 and 2023 ordinary parliamentary sessions tomorrow, Thursday, according to a press release issued by the parliamentary institution. The closing takes place in accordance with the provisions of Article 138 of the Constitution and Article 5 of Organic Law 1612, amended and complemented, setting out the organization and functioning of the National People's Assembly and the Council of the Nation, as well as the functional relations between the chambers of Parliament and the government. The closing ceremony will begin at 11 a.m., the press release concludes. The standing committees of the National People's Assembly have presented the results of their activities for the ordinary parliamentary session 2022-2023 during a meeting chaired Tuesday by APN Speaker Brahim Boughali. In his speech, Brahim Boughali indicated that this meeting, taking place during the last days of the current parliamentary session, allows us to inquire about what has been accomplished in terms of legislative achievements in tune with the great efforts made by the Algerian state under the leadership of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, since his election, and his commitment before the people to move forward towards the materialization of global takeoff at all levels and in all areas. Algeria and the Union of Arab Economic and Social Councils and similar institutions have signed on Tuesday an agreement under which Algiers will host the headquarters of this institution. The agreement was signed at the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad by the Director General of Protocols at the Ministry, Abdelghani Amara, representing the Algerian government, and the President of the Union of Arab Economic and Social Councils and similar institutions, Bouchnaq Khaladi Sidi Mohamed, representing the Union in the presence of the Secretary General of the Ministry, Lounas Magraman, and several other executives. The Union of Arab Economic and Social Councils and similar institutions was created by virtue of the decisions of the first conference on the Union held in Algeria on October 30th and 31st, 2015, which elected Algiers to host the headquarters of this Arab institution, which includes, in addition to Algeria, 8 other Arab countries. This convention aims to promote the culture of dialogue between the member states of this union, to activate its mechanisms to coordinate the efforts between the Arab Economic and Social Councils in the Arab and international fora, in addition to encouraging the Arab countries to create economic and social councils in order to strengthen and deepen participatory democracy and achieve peace and social stability in the Arab world. The Director General of Customs, Nourdin Khaldi, has received in Algiers the Commander of Palestinian Customs, Iyad Abdelrazak Hamdan Barakat, as well as the delegation accompanying him, with whom he discussed bilateral cooperation in the customs field, notably training. In statements to the press at the end of this meeting, which took place at the headquarters of the General Directorate of Customs in the presence of executives from both sides, the representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the representative of the Ambassador of the State of Palestine to Algiers, Nourdin Khaldi, affirmed that his services will endeavor to support and develop the capacities of the Palestinian customs to face the challenges with which they are confronted, mentioning the establishment of a roadmap to boost training for the benefit of all Palestinian executives. According to Nourdin Khaldi, this will materialize by keeping Palestinian customs informed of the successful and pioneering experiences of Algerian customs, which have recorded qualitative leaps, particularly in the field of training, and by transmitting its expertise in various fields with a view to combating cross-border economic crime and eradicating the phenomenon of money laundering and fraud. For his part, the person in charge of Palestinian customs praised the availability of the Algerian customs services to train Palestinian executives and customs officers, indicating that the specialties and the fields in which one wishes to train have been fixed. Still with the burning Middle East file, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh has warned that the Palestinian territories know are experiencing a situation of unprecedented complexity at all levels. During his meeting in Ramallah in the West Bank with Stefan Hickey, Director of Middle East and North Africa Affairs at the British Foreign Office, Mohammed Tayyeh referred to the absence of political horizon, financial blockade, and embezzlement of Palestinian funds by the Zionists. Saad Bougazi has more again.
The Zionist measures we are witnessing, such as the incursions in the Palestinian territories and the speeding up of settlement activities, said Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh, constitute a reoccupation of the West Bank, including towns, villages, and refugee camps. Mohammed Shtayyeh urged the United Kingdom to work alongside the international community to put pressure on the Zionist occupier so that it abides by all the agreements signed, including the holding of elections in all the Palestinian territories and putting an end to all unilateral measures. During his meeting on Monday with the Palestinian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Riyad al-Maliki, Stephen Hickey affirmed that it was important to reopen the avenues of constructive dialogue in order to guarantee peace and security in the region, adding that the British government supports the Palestinian government and the Palestinian people. In another development, dozens of settlers stormed the esplanade of the Al-Aqsa Mosque today, reported the Palestinian news agency Wafa. The Zionist settlers entered the Holy Mosque from the side of the Mughrabi Gate, marched through its esplanades, and performed Talmudic rituals, adds Wafa. The Holy Mosque has witnessed a series of daily violations and incursions by Zionist settlers. The Zionist occupation is trying to prevent the Palestinians from practicing their rights to worship, while the settlers are permitted to practice their Talmudic rituals freely. In 2022, the Al-Aqsa Mosque was stormed more than 260 times by some 48,000 settlers, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Waqf and Religious Affairs.
Still with the Middle East file, the International Criminal Court, ICC, is to launch shortly an electronic platform allowing Palestinians to lodge complaints against Zionists, settlers and soldiers for their crimes and attacks. The advisor to the Palestinian Foreign Ministry, Omar Awadallah, said Tuesday. Omar Awadallah said during his speech on the radio Voice of Palestine that this platform will allow citizens to submit complaints accompanied by photos and videos which show the crimes of the occupation against them in order to submit them to the court for examining to take a dissuasive position against the Zionist entity. At least 10 civilians were killed in two separate attacks carried out on Monday by armed men against two localities in western Burkina Faso, security and local sources said on Tuesday. Yesterday, at around 10 p.m. local time, armed individuals fired shells at Nouna, capital of the Kossi province in the Boucle du Mouom region of Burkina Faso, said local sources quoted by the media. The same evening, 400 kilometers further south, the town of Tondura, southwest, bordering Ivory Coast, was also the target of an attack by armed individuals, said a local official quoted by the press agencies. To the Ukrainian file now, Russia has warned Ukraine against its desire to continue grain exports via the Black Sea, underlining that there were no more safety guarantees after the expiry of an agreement that allowed them to be transported despite the war. In the absence of appropriate security safeguards, certain risks are emerging, warned Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. Said Bougazi has more.
Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov was responding to a question on the willingness expressed by Ukraine to continue to export its cereals via the Black Sea, with or without the agreement of Moscow on ship safety. Echoing this, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said to his Turkish counterpart Hakan Fidan that the end of the agreement meant that the northwest of the Black Sea, through which cargo ships circulate, became a zone temporarily dangerous. Ministers considered other options for supplying cereals to most needy countries, Russian diplomacy said in a statement. French President Emmanuel Macron has ruled that Vladimir Putin has made a huge mistake by making food a weapon, hammering that Russia has decided to starve countries already in difficulty. EU Commission Chairperson Moussa Faki Mahamat said on Twitter he regrets the Russian decision and called for the resumption of the agreement for transport of cereals and fertilizers to the regions that need them, notably Africa. For UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, hundreds of millions of people face hunger with the suspension of this agreement and will pay the price. For his part, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today accused Russia of deliberately targeting in its strikes sites used to export Ukrainian grain 3 days after the expiry of a crucial agreement on the subject.
And with this, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for weekly program, starting with my colleague Asya Bakar, and this will be followed by another program by my colleague Jamal Silmani. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition. Thank you and goodbye. A story in an artwork. A weekly program that tells stories flavored with art.
Shabi or popular music in Algeria can be translated as Algerian portraits.
Yeah, Algerian portraits. It's about profile of
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to our program, A Story in Artwork. Today's story has become known through a very popular poem, sung particularly by Shabi or folk singers. The song, Ya al-Maqnin al-Zin, Arabic for beautiful bird or goldfinch, talks about a goldfinch who, after being free and joyous, gets imprisoned in a cage and depends on his jailers to survive. Seems like the story of all beautiful birds. But who is this bird that generations of singers and music instruments lament his imprisonment in a cage without any hope of seeing him spread his wings and fly again?
المقانين الزان أصفر الجنحان أحمر خندان ياك حي العينان هذه مدة وسنان في القبص حزين تغني بزود حنين لا من نبام وانا.
The story starts with the poet Muhammad al-Baji, known as Al-Baz. In 1957, i.e., during the Algerian Liberation War, Muhammad al-Baji was imprisoned by the French colonization for participating in the 8-day strike. He was sentenced to death and put in Sarkaji prison, one of the oldest Algerian prisons, also known as Barbarossa. The arrest of Muhammad al-Baji coincided with the arrest of his 19-year-old cellmate. They waited for their execution together, but it happened that Muhammad al-Baji survived to tell us about the story of his cellmate.
ما يكون عنده قلب حنين ما يبان بعد تغلى كلين ما يكون عنده قلب حنين ما يبان بعد تغلى كلين ما نتفاهموا غير حنا
His cellmate was Boualam Rahal, the youngest martyr of the Algerian Revolution, whom the French colonization beheaded illegally by guillotine. Yes, Boualam Rahal is the bird whose fate is deplored in the song. Referring to his young age and beauty, the singer and poet starts with this passage. Beautiful goldfinch with yellow wings, red cheeks, and black eyes. It's been quite a time that you have been singing in this sad cage, but no one understands your singing nor your sadness. Boualam Rahal was a football player in the Mouloudia Junior Club and a member of the National Liberation Front at a young age, 19 years old. It was illegal for the French colonization to execute war veterans under 20 years old, so they forged his birth certificate by adding 10 months to apply the death penalty to him. His birthday is November 26, 1937. They changed it to February 26, 1937. The death penalty was applied to Boualam Rahal on June 20th, 1957 in Serkaji prison in Algiers. The young martyr requested to be executed by firing squad instead of guillotine, but the French authorities refused.
غنيت تفكر الايام اللي كنت فيهم حار اللي كنت فيهم حار.
It is true that he died at a very young age in a very ugly way, but his story and pain survived and proved that to live does not only mean to keep blowing candles year after year, but also to become an inspiring work of art, a song that delights generations to come while reminding them of the importance and beauty of freedom, as we can deduce from this passage in the song.
تغني تتفكر الايام اللي كنت فيهم حر.
When you sing, you remember the days you were free, spreading your wings in the air and living on trees. But it is God's will that you got caught in this cage with neither good food nor clean water. Beautiful goldfinch, those who are not tortured don't feel your pain, and those who don't know your value set you on fire.
تبقى ومكتوبة في الجبين يا المقنين
يا المقنين الزين يصفر الجناحين يحمر.
The story of Boualam Rahal, the youngest martyr in the Algerian Revolution, made the poet Mohammed El-Badji forget about his own pain and imprisonment to deplore the youngster's fate in one of his most popular poems. In addition to Mohammed El-Badji or El-Baz, many other folk singers performed the song Ya Al-Maqnin Al-Zin or Beautiful Goldfinch, notably Amar Zdahi, Naimat Ziria, Boujma Al-Anqis, among others. With this beautiful song, we come to the end of today's program, A Story in an Artwork. Do join us, dear listeners, next week for another story.